And then I want to get into the chronology. It seems to me that on September the 3rd, 2011, an article that negatively portrayed the hospital and our involvement with it appeared in the Wall Street Journal. Now, Chairman Chaffetz, I missed part of your opening statement. Would you be gracious enough to perhaps share just a couple of the more salient examples from that article about abuse and neglect at the hospital? Just a couple if you have them. I apologize, I was in another committee hearing when I missed it.
There were a series of very graphic photos and very specific allegations of patient neglect. And the other thing I would highlight here is that on September 3rd, General, you sent to General Allen an email about the Wall Street Journal article and said, quote, did not contain any of the items concerns we had previously discussed. Rather, it focused on NMH and Afghan leadership. You also stated it's clear that the author, Maria, was provided emails and internal briefings and pictures by someone within the command, which confirmed that we have all suspected from earlier discussions. It was obviously clear to you that there was a lot of patient neglect going on. This goes back into September 3rd. And yet you testified, my concern is that the General just said that he had no emails, no information that this was happening.
So, Chairman, if the chronology, if my chronology is correct, we have a negative article on September the 3rd, 2011. We have a letter from our colleague, Congressman Kaufman, on September the 7th, 2011. We have an article in the Army Times on September the 11th, September the 7th, 2011. And then we have a new policy promulgated, a memorandum that sets forth a new policy, Chairman Chaffetz, not surprisingly, on September the 12th, 2011. So in the course of less than 10 days, we have a negative story, a congressional inquiry, an article in the Army Times, and then we have a new policy. So, General Caldwell, my question to you with specific reference to this policy, one of the goals of the policy is to promote a positive image of coalition forces. And this memo is specific with respect to persons assigned or attached to Command Surgeon Medical Training Advisory Group. Wouldn't you be more interested in an accurate image being portrayed as opposed to a positive one? I mean, if the reality is bad, then why is it so important 9 days after a negative story to stop the photographs?
Congressman, at the time, I was not aware of this memo. I've been made aware of it since. I do know that last week this committee did get deposition from the command surgeon as to the chronology and events and activities starting around the, I believe it was the April 2011 time frame when this memo.
Would you agree with me it is more important to show a realistic, accurate portrayal of what's happening as opposed to just wanting to focus on the positive? I mean, we would all like to live life only highlighting the positive, but that's not. I mean, that's not our job on this committee. We're interested in what was really happening. So, why 9 days after a negative article do we get this memo restricting what can be disclosed and telling folks that we want to assert a positive image?
Again, Congressman, I didn't review the memo. I wasn't associated when that was released while I was in command there. But my command surgeon did start putting that memo together back in the April time frame, and it took many months before it was completed because of the reviews that were done all the way up to the CENTCOM headquarters to ensure the proper wording and clarification as to what was being sought after. And the intent behind the memo, as I now understand it, and again, she gave deposition to this committee last week in pretty exhausting detail, as I understand, explaining everything about this memo. But was that her goal was to ensure that we weren't violating any privacy rights of individuals.
And General, I agree. That is a worthwhile goal. It just makes me wonder why it took so long to promulgate a memo to protect that goal. You see, my point is the chronology. Negative story. Let's issue a memo that makes sure this never happens again.
But again,
You're
that
talking
memo,
about patient protection. Patient protection was just as important an issue the day that we showed up at that hospital. It didn't just become important in September of 2011. It's the timing of it. That you don't have to be cynical or skeptical to question the timing, the chronology of this, I don't think, do you?
I believe, again, Congressman, that this memo started being drafted in April, and it took about 4 months. There was absolutely no connection, as I understand she said in her disposition, between when she finally got it back approved for release by both the ISAF headquarters and the CENTCOM headquarters, who had to review it and approve it both through legal channels and up there before this could be released, and when it got released. There, as I understand from her, that there was absolutely no correlation between the two.
But when you see a negative article in a widely read publication, you have a letter from a member of Congress, you have an article in the Army Times, and within the course of less than 10 days, you have a memo telling people to do things differently and promote a positive image, you could see why we might be skeptical of that chronology.
Right, right. I think the intent of her memo was telling people that let's respect the right of each Afghan citizen. It's a sovereign nation you're operating in. If you have photos that we think we need to record and provide, let's do it through official channels. There's no objection to doing photos, but if we are, they need to be done in an official manner, properly controlled through official channels.
And I agree with all that. It just makes me wonder why the memo wasn't promulgated a lot sooner. Those are very important concerns. So important that you would want that memo out maybe the day after the thought crossed your mind that we want to protect patient security. I just find the chronology to be curious.
Within 30 days of her coming in and assuming her job as the command surgeon, she identified this as a issue that had not yet been addressed. And she
Who was her predecessor?
Was Colonel Geller.
He did not think patient security was as significant an issue as she did?
I can't speak to this thought
the
process.
gentleman
I can just tell you she identified this within 30 days of her taking over as the command surgeon as an area that had not yet been addressed by somebody, and she took it on to make sure that it was properly addressed.
With the gentleman,
Sure.
General, why was it the policy that the photos should be destroyed? Why destroy evidence? Why not turn this over to the Inspector General?
I think, and again, as I've, after the fact now have read this memo, as I understand the memo, it says,
but General,
if you have photos, turn them over to official authorities. It doesn't, it said if there's a photo that's, that needs to be retained, it needs to be retained in official.
No, it doesn't. It says unofficial personal photos or video or audio recordings of patients or healthcare events taken by personnel subject to this policy, which already exist, will be destroyed or deleted.
Right. I believe it's either the paragraph right before or after that one, Chairman, that is clarifying that if you have personal photos that need to be retained in an official manner, to please do so.
We'll dispute that. I think it's in black and white. We'll look at this. And I guess one of the questions, we're well over our time here, is how is it that it takes 4 months to issue a memo, and you're the commander, and you didn't even see it? You say you had no idea that this went out. I've never read it. I didn't know about it. How can that be, that it goes out on your letterhead, and you say you don't even know about it?
Chairman, there's a lot of things in the command that I would expect my subordinates to do the proper and right thing. And if they're doing the proper and right thing, they don't have to show me everything. If they believe it is something that is contrary to what we've done before, is a change or something, I would hope they would bring it to my attention. But she had this fully within her authority as the command surgeon, and I would have expected her.
And Colonel Fossil did not have the command or the authority to ask the Inspector General to come in and help him out?
No, he would have absolutely had that authority.
You pulled it back.
Our command was making a request to request outside assistance on October 28th. And when they did, and we had not finished the necessary and proper coordination, we had not notified the Minister of Defense, and we had not told the President of Afghanistan. Again, I go back, you asked me why my statement, Chairman, was written as it was, because if you don't understand the tenets on which we were operating under, the idea that we team with our Afghan counterparts, that we have transparency with them, that we're not going to try to do something that we're not going to look them in the face and say, you've got a corruption problem. I had been telling the Minister of Defense and his key officials, but we had not yet gone to the President of Afghanistan and also told him. And so we asked them to make sure that he was told before we made that. But it did not stop any of the ongoing coordination that occurred between the Department of Defense and our team. In fact, on the 4th of November.
I guess I would disagree with that, General. I would disagree with that.
All right.
But we'll continue to explore. As we've gone way over time, I thank the gentleman from South Carolina.
I thank the chairman, and I thank the gentleman from Utah for his indulgence.